Is there something in our DNA that is most self-actualized when we are hunting? And if so, what is it? I would argue that there are few activities on this planet that cause the human being to enter the present moment with more force and completeness than in that moment of truth just before we take an animal's life. And it's more than that. There's something spiritual in the harvest of an animal's flesh and bones so that we may live. And not only live, but so that we may thrive. Discomfort, frozen hands and feet, sleeping on the ground, hiking countless miles, denying the negative voices in your head, schooling your adrenaline, overcoming doubts, honing weapon skills, feeling nature, reading animal behavior, predicting the wind, being both predator and prey at the same time. These things awaken ethereal human senses that all too often lay dormant in the heart of the modern man. If these things are true, one-dimensional statements like, "I hunt for meat," do not even scratch the surface for why we do what we do. Our message needs to evolve because it's deeper than what we've been saying. Today I visit with my friend Adam Janke from the Journal of Mountain Hunting. It's always a pleasure to visit with Adam because he's continually challenging my ideas and preconceived notions. I hope this episode gets you thinking about why you hunt and how you share your story, because everybody has one, and how it's told can make all the difference.
We don't see like the gravity, the seriousness of that event through the eyes of the non-hunter, right? To us, it is like you said, it's natural. It's part of us. It's who we are, right? I truly believe, I think like you, there's an inborn component to our DNA, right? Yeah. That is probably most alive, most self-actualized, without sounding like some philosophical idiot, when we are hunting. It almost seems to me, and I'd love to hear your experience with this, is the people that come to it late in life, they in my experience, are often even more obsessed and passionate than people that have been doing it for most of their life.
I would say this, that they do not take it for granted. To me, if you want to change the way corporations respond, the way companies do their business, that comes at changing the hearts and minds of the individuals.
So, Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to your show,
it's
my show.
Yeah.
Like, where do we go with this one?
This is the Journal of Mountain Hunting / Gritty show today.
The Journal of Gritty
Mountain Hunting.
Bowman hunting. Right.
And we are in my hotel room with a video camera next to the beds, which is it's a little. Don't think that way, guys.
I would like. So what I want. Actually, you know what we should do? We should grab one of the cleaning ladies and ask her what was your first impression. When you walked into that room.
Yeah, I wondered that too. It just seemed a little risque.
Yeah, you got some supplements over there on the counter to
snort. So we are in Reno, Nevada, at the Sheep Show.
Sunny and beautiful Reno, Nevada.
It is beautiful.
Today, yeah.
I thought it was going to rain and snow. That's what they said.
Yeah.
But it didn't.
Yeah.
So
let's not do weather. That's my bad.
So we are here, and we did our podcast not too long ago on the grizzly bear ban, and that's really where we first, had a real conversation.
Yep.
And I'm glad we're sitting down again to dive into some more topics. And you flew one by me yesterday.
I did. And imposed some rules on saving what I know will be some golden stuff. Because if we'd kept going last night, we'd probably
get it all out.
Yeah, get it all out.
Yeah. So we're gonna dive into some things today, and I don't know. I think that it's important to talk about the future of hunting, how you represent hunting, those sort of topics. And we both love to hunt and have a lot of hunting stories and so forth. And maybe we'll get into that at some point. But right now, I don't really get to discuss some aspects of hunting. Like with Jordan Harbison, he gets bored out of his mind when we have these types of more in-depth conversations. So with that, tell me.
Hold on, because I got a question for you. Because I think it informs this discussion around the image we represent. Why do you hunt?
I just had a podcast with Donnie Vincent.
Nice.
And it's complex. It's not just one reason. I feel like a lot of hunters boil it down to just a unidimensional discussion where it's like, I hunt for meat.
Right.
And Donnie's quote is, to say you're a meat hunter is just as misleading as someone who says they're a trophy hunter. There's so much that behind the statement. Why do I hunt? I'd be lying if I said I didn't, if I said it wasn't fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fun for me.
Yeah.
But I also like to climb mountains, and I also like to do CrossFit workouts that leave you on the floor and make you wonder if you're going to survive and actually induce vomit. So, but I like to feel alive.
Right.
And so there's a sense of adventure, danger. There's a predator instinct that sort of, I think, is in my DNA that comes out that I'm not ashamed of or embarrassed of. It's who we are.
Well, and this is to me one of the great challenges we have in how we represent hunting and the image we put forth is it's really hard to distill into one sentence or one image, right? And that's one that I've chewed on for a long time. Is I used to self-identify as a meat hunter, and then now, frankly, I'd probably more self-identify with
adventure.
Adventure hunting for sure, but selective hunting. Some might think of that as trophy. I don't have a negative view of trophy hunting, and we can or can't get into that. That's neither here nor there. I just think that word trophy is. We've lost it, right? We can't. I think we talked about this when we last spoke. Did the podcast. Is we'll never really reclaim that,
right?
But at the end of the day, it is an incredibly complex pursuit or endeavor, right? And the hard part is when a person doesn't understand. And I'm not talking about the antis. I'm talking about that huge proportion of the population that might even actually be curious and maybe even interested in what we do, to try to distill it into one thing, like it's for meat or it's for trophy, aka conservation in most cases, I think is doing a disservice to the complexity, right? To the depth of what this represents, right? It's tough, right? By no means do I think I have any answers here. What I'm saying is I don't think as a community we really acknowledge that complexity that you brought up, right?
I agree. I think, when I first made the podcast, the second or third episode, I had a guy get on, I think it was YouTube, and leave a comment, and he said, he left a comment after the first one and the second one, and it's like, man, these are awesome. I love this. I learned so much, in that, and in the second one, third one. And somewhere along the way, it was a few episodes in, and he said, he goes, these are great except for one thing. Can you somehow get them down to 15 minutes? And it's a 2-hour conversation about, backpacking and gear and clothing and boots. And you never know in a conversation like this where it will go.
No.
And you don't really know, what tangent you might go off on that illuminates some topic that where you learn something you didn't know. And I might take it completely for granted to talk about a floorless shelter and make some comment about it. And to me, it's not even part of the discussion, but it's just something I threw out there on the side. And that's the nugget that guy is happy with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the idea that you can boil all that down into get to that in 15 minutes, it just doesn't work. They don't. But we have this culture where people want things in a very quick and simple, unidimensional fashion where they can just go, boom, labeled it, consumed it, done.
Yeah.
And you can't do that when you're talking about hunting because it is really complex. Taking an animal's life, consuming it, eating it, it's not something that the non-hunter fully understands.
And if you don't mind me interrupting, Brian, this will have been mentioned on one of our recent episodes. They don't understand everything about that, right? That you can't fault them for that. If they've never done it, how can they?
Yeah.
We, as hunters, I don't even know if this is a matter of understanding or just acknowledging the fact that we don't see like the gravity, the seriousness of that event through the eyes of the non-hunter, right? To us, it is like you said, it's natural. It's part of us. It's who we are, right? I truly believe, I think like you, there's an inborn component to our DNA, right? Yeah. That is probably most alive, most self-actualized without sounding like some philosophical idiot, when we are hunting, right? But if a person's never tapped into that, right, they don't know. Like if a person, it's like if somebody looking at CrossFit being like, that's stupid. And they go and do it like, I get it, right?
I think it's the same. You'll see it with an individual who's never hunted before, who's gone out hunting and thought, and then has come back and been like, I had no idea that it was this, this is what happens when you do it. And now you see individuals from walks of life that you're like, they would never hunt.
Yeah.
And then they go do it, and now they're obsessed with it. Like, they think about it all the time. Like, I would never have guessed years ago that if Joe Rogan went and flung some arrows on a hunt, that now he would want to like be obsessed with it and go, but every year.
Isn't that interesting though? How it almost seems to me, and I'd love to hear your experience with this, is the people that come to it late in life, they in my experience, are often even more obsessed and passionate than people that have been doing it for most of their life.
I would say this, that they do not take it for granted.
Right.
A lot of people who grew up with it their whole lives.
Great way to put it.
Yeah, I think we have a tendency to just take it for granted. It's awesome. Yeah. It's like I had a discussion with Dallas Haymeyer today, and he's gone to Mongolia and Tajikistan, and he's done these turkey and done these hunts in other places. And the concept of clean water, we take it for granted here.
Absolutely.
And over there, it made him so sick that he thought he was going to die, And so we take for granted a lot of things. And as hunters, we're guilty of it. We take for granted what an experience it is because we've had it our whole lives. And I agree. Someone who has the adult onset hunting bug,
I love it.
They definitely, life without it is so fresh that they don't take it for granted, and they really appreciate it in a way that, and they're, I think too, it's like whenever you find something wonderful, the first thing you want to do is go and share it with everybody else that you know.
Yeah.
And especially where they come to it with hunting is special in the sense that a lot of people have negative feelings about it. And then they like Joe goes and experiences it, he comes back and he says, hey, all you guys that think this is really wrong, it's not. Guess what? It's actually totally the opposite. You got to check it out. And that's why I really appreciate those people who come into hunting as adults, much later in life, who also have a large sphere of influence with individuals who are not, who are also out of hunting.
Yeah.
Because it's like they're our ambassadors.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're able to go to, those that don't understand us and say, okay, I'm one of them now, and I'm one of you, and kind of bridge the gap.
Yeah, which
is
the key.
It's been huge.
Yeah, it's key. It makes me wonder, when a person experiences it, later in life, and has the response that so many do, right? Where they're just like, it consumes them in a good way, right? If, it kind of brings me back to that notion of there being some sort of genetic, whatever, marker for this, because it's like, it was almost like, what's the word? Not recessed, suppressed, right? And then they open that door and it's just like, they light up with it, right?
I do. I think there are senses that are switched on when you're trying to sneak up on an animal.
No doubt, yeah.
That are just not switched on otherwise.
Well, and you'll, I'm sure, appreciate this maybe more than some, but have you read Rise of Superman?
No.
The book about flow state? Mm-mm. When I say
I probably would like it, but
you would love it.
Sounds good.
You would love it, man. When I say flow state, you know what I mean, right?
No.
So,
like,
so flow state's like the modern term for like the zone, being in the zone, right?
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
In a stock, and like you're just, everything's automatic, and whether it's the bow or the rifle, whatever, right? So this book called The Rise of Superman, I think the Rise of Superman or something like that, and it's mostly told through the lens of action sport athletes, like, snowboarders, skiers.
The Rise of Superman.
The Rise of Superman, yeah. And the whole premise of the book is science has begun to understand what we've called the zone for a very long time, right? Like the athletes are in the zone, right? And there are actual like biological and biochemical processes behind this that you can, I hate to use the term, but you can actually hack to achieve that sort of higher state of consciousness, right? So they give examples of like, a guy, say like Travis Rice, right? A pro snowboarder. Shouldn't be able to go and do the things he does in Alaska or whatever, peak in some far-flung corner of the globe. Like he should be dead by now, right? But he's not, because he is most alive, right? In a simpler sense. But his senses are able to pick things up, right? In those moments of, shredding some gnarly line, right? And, we could apply this to big wave surfing and this sort of stuff. Because he's tapping into what science has come to call a flow state. There's a really cool example in the book where, did you ever see the movie, I don't know which one of the Transformers it was. Did you watch any of those movies? The Transformers? Do you remember the one where the guys, they jump and they, wingsuit through Chicago? So in the book, they talk about how they trained a ton, obviously to do that. And to make the turns they did, the lead guy would, so like to bank right or left, would just literally like turn his foot, like from like, say, 9 o'clock to, or 3 o'clock to like 2 o'clock, like slight movement. And when that guy made that alteration to change his flight path, the whole stack of guys had to make that like in under a second. And it got to the point where they were basically operating on an extrasensory perception, where they just, because they would see like the initiation of that movement, right? Like we're talking like a hair's movement. They could pick that up because they were in this flow state, right? And what's interesting about hunting, and I wonder about, sort of, for lack of a good way to put it, almost the addiction some hunters have, is that we are tapping into that flow state when you're stalking in, when you're, activating those senses that, frankly, modern life doesn't do on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm moving in on an Alberta mule deer, and all the senses are firing and you're sneaking in, or an elk, whatever it is, I mean, I forget, like, I'm not thinking about email. I'm not thinking about, bills or work or kids, wife. I'm not thinking about anything except that kill. Like I'm 100% wired into that at a level that I don't know that I do that with anything else.
Yeah.
Everything falls away and I completely forget about it. And it can be a 6-hour stalk. And it's just, there's something liberating about that moment, that whole moving in, the whole thing. And I mean, like Joe said in that UA hunt film recently with him and Cam, he's like, there's nothing like it.
No.
There's nothing like it. And he's done combat sports. He's done, some crazy things. Standing in front of 1,000, thousands of people and doing a comedy routine is, I would think is highly stressful, right? Especially if no one's laughing. And every comedian had to go through that before they, before they became good at their craft. Mm-hmm. But yet it's different.
It is. It's totally different. And I used to do a lot of trail running, so long distance stuff, and a couple of buddies and I that I would do that with, we'd often have this discussion about Zen and the art of trail running. That book, what's that book? Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. Or something like that,
right.
Because a fast, very technical downhill section of trail where like literally you screw up and you're gonna at least have a really bad sprain,
right,
and potentially like an outright fracture, right? It would amaze me because we'd go like smoking down this like super technical section of trail. And the fact that I could see something, 10 yards out or 5 yards out, whatever it is, depends on the grade. And that would then pass under me and my foot would know where to be, right? Blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. So like that approximates, I think, that sort of flow state that's achieved in hunting. Or, I'm sure you could say the same for like a gnarly line skiing or snowboarding or something along those lines. Or anything where there's an element of risk, I think. But it doesn't require the same total awareness of hunting. Right?
Yeah.
Like you're personally at risk, and you're making decisions in whatever sense of self-preservation, basically, right? But there's so much more to that hunting experience, that stalk, right? Or that moment before the shot, where you like it's you, that animal, it's your breath, and I've experienced what you're describing with the flow state in sports. I'm sure,
between snowboarding, even basketball, where you throw the ball up in the air and it just keeps falling in the net. Like you're just I had played this game once where I scored like 44 points and it was crazy. And I'm like, I just couldn't miss. Could not miss the basket. You just, some days and then you try to get that back. And you can't, but you have that one that maybe this time it's going to be like that again. But that is just, I don't know.
I've got a, if you don't mind.
But I would say would say that that's what hunting feels like. And that's,
absolutely,
it seems to be more achievable than those incredible golf games or basketball games or, it's interesting.
Well, it's a fast track, right? It's like, if you like, I think like kind of the whole point of mentioning that book, Rise of Superman, is the whole book is about how do we access this on a regular basis, whether that's in sports or business or whatever. Right? Like, how do you achieve the highest version of you, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting about the hunting side of it is, you can go snowboard and not have a flow state day. You're cruising blues and greens with your kids and it's fun, but you're not going to be sitting there like
in the zone,
right? And you can go and play basketball. You can go and play a game of golf. You can go trail running on some, basically wide mountain bike trail.
The goal though is to get in the zone.
Of course it is.
That's what you want. Of course that's what you're thirsty for.
That's what you're searching for. And the point is that with hunting, when it comes to that, that stock opportunity or the moment before a shot or everything that goes up like to that, is you're going to get it. There's going to be
you're not chasing it the way you do on the mountain on a snowboard.
Yeah. It comes with
or
it.
Or in a basketball game.
It comes with it. It's not like, is this going to happen today? I mean, sure, like you don't know how the hunt's going to go, but if it becomes one of those hunts, you're going to get it, right? You're going to get that flow state.
That's really interesting.
Right? Like I have a short story. So a few years ago, I shot an elk in northern BC. This was with a rifle. My buddy and I were, camped out on this river, on the banks of this river, and we planned to hike up this tributary and spike out. And so we set our alarms for whatever, let's say 5:30 or something like that. We get woken up by a bugle at 5. Both come out of the tents like Cheshire Cat grins, right? Just like, oh yeah, it's on, right? So anyways, foggy as all get out that morning. So this was our first morning. And we didn't know anything about this tributary. This was, whatever, pretty uncharted stuff. we actually hadn't even planned to go in there. We got dropped off by jet boat by a friend we were going to go somewhere else. And they're like, yeah, that's really busy down that way. Why don't you guys try here? So we didn't have maps. So we didn't do any Google Earth pre-scouting. Just for like, yeah, we'll just go in there. And we're going to hunt. We're going to figure it out. So anyways, with the fog, we decided not to go like bumbling up this tributary with headlamps on and making noise. We're just like, okay, let's just let the fog lift a little bit. You know, most people will agree that with fog, you know, animals will tend to hang out a little bit longer, right? So anyways, we go stalking up this tributary. Perfect morning. Wind's in our face. You know, the aspens are, you know, fluttering away, quaking, right? It's, you know, cow calling, just like new, like you couldn't ask for a better day. Like new country, like that full sensory experience, right? We get up to this, so we're hiking up this tributary, and the river's braiding, as you know, a lot of rivers will do. And we get to this point. The river had come down to two braids came into the middle, and it branched off this way. And I don't know whether it was, let's say 10 a.m., 11 a.m., something like that. And we drop our packs, and we actually hadn't brought all of our stuff. Like we weren't going to spike out then. We wanted to go just sort of, you know, kind of scout out for a few kilometers, a few miles, whatever, and then come back, load up our spike camp and head in. And so we stopped to drop our packs, have a bite. A buddy's taking a leak. I'm sitting on this log. My gun's like, you know, propped up over here. And at the same time, we both hear hooves on river rock. He turns to me. He's like, elk, right? And the switch flips like that. And this is the point of the story, is instantaneous flow state. And I actually, like, I can remember it thinking back, but there was no thinking, right? I grabbed my rifle, jumped over the log, ran through the river waist deep, and got onto this little, not an island, but a little, you know, bunch of rocks in the middle that were dry. Look, as I'm running through the river, I look right, 7x6 bull elk standing right there. And a really good bull especially for BC. Drop to a knee. He's looking at me front on. Water's dripping. He's just taking a drink out of the river, right? He's just water dripping out of that big mane, right? Big, dark, ivory, like dark, like black antlers with ivory tips, right? Drop to a knee, like total, like sort of athletic movement, like knee, rifle up, like down to the knee, rifle up, and it's only about 70 or 80 yards away. But like just purely automatic. There is no thinking to this whatsoever, right? Yeah. And he's front on, so I can't. He's got to be six points better than I am, so I can't get that. I couldn't get a good look. And I can remember this so clear. I'm like, give me 6. I'm like, literally, I've got him in my scope, and I'm like, give me 6, give me 6, give me 6, give me 6. Turns his head, get my 6 point, boom, drops. And I didn't know anything. I'll check my language. Sorry. Didn't know anything about flow states at that point, right? And I remember reading Rise of Superman, being like, that's exactly what I just had, or not just had, but had in that moment, right? And like, and this is actually one of the defining points of a flow state is that event when it happens will be utterly and completely seared, like branded into your memory, right? And so like that's the kind of thing, right? And when you get those opportunities or those, and I know that doesn't always turn out, right? The animal doesn't always go down, maybe whatever, right? But it's always there in hunting.
I was going to say that there's that moment where I think the flow state is interrupted, though, and that's where you have the buck fever or you have the blackout, right? It's that's not a flow state. And kind of what you're describing is that moment where everything is clicking and there's supreme confidence in what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there's just supreme confidence. You know you're not. You're not screwing this up. Like it's not even that you know it. It's just you're doing what you're doing. Yeah. And the kill, the hunt is all one. Yeah. Cause I've experienced both the buck fever, target panic, whatever you want to call it, where, there's no flow state. There's bumbling. There's adrenaline. So powerful. You're not controlling it. You're not in any zone. Yeah. And you do something and then you're like, what the hell just happened as the animal runs off? And you're like, did I even aim at anything? Like, what happened? And that's totally different than this experience that you're describing. Usually that experience you're describing early in my hunting career, that came when I was on a spot and stock. Mm-hmm. Because I think that allowed me time to calm down. Mm-hmm. When I was in a couple of times where I just missed, I was walking through the trees, blah, 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 blah. Elk pops out. Adrenaline's up.
Yeah.
Miss shot.
Yeah.
Like that. Like it's just, now though, most of the time everything is, there's just I'm just killing the animal. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I'm just moving in, and it doesn't always work that way. That's how I feel though.
Right.
It's a totally different feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and then there's a certain level of, I think, competency that's required. If I'm remembering the book appropriately, there's a certain level of competency that's required to get there. Right?
Yeah.
Because if you are bumbling and fumbling and it's your first time looking at an animal through,
Yeah. There's nothing to flow to.
There's nothing to flow to.
I can't flow with 40 points in a basketball game if I don't have some base.
You can't take a shot, right? Or take a layup. So it's, but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting.
It's really cool. I remember, so one time my cousin and I were super competitive, cousin Ben, and, in college, I took a snowboarding class. In fact, I took it every semester because that's how I roll. So I audited this snowboarding course, and, it was like 9 trips to the mountain. It was part of your tuition. We would go to Grand Targhee, Wyoming. Mm-hmm. I went to school at BYU, Idaho. At the time, they called it Rick's College, just a little tiny campus. And I'd get on the bus, and we'd bus up to the mountain, and then we'd snowboard. And before that, we had a little starving student card back then, and for a few bucks you could go hit, these little mountains for like $5, and they were ghetto little ski hills, but it didn't matter.
$5, right?
It was $5. Yeah. And we did it. I tried to snowboard like 4 or 5 days a week, but the school would haul us up to the mountain at least one day, and you'd hit like Grand Targhee or Big Sky.
Right.
And I'd never hit snow like that. I'd snowed in Oregon. Or skied in Oregon, snowboarded in Oregon off of Mount Hood, but it wasn't like this.
No.
We were hitting Jackson Hole and things like that. It was like a whole nother little world.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Well, we go into this class together, and we're up on the top, and we decide that we've been snowboarding for years now. Mm-hmm. So they had the beginner, intermediate, and then they had this advanced class. And so we all get off the lifts at the top. And this instructor comes out, and he's like, so y'all signed up for the advanced class. And he said, okay, well, this is how we do this. Whoever's still with me at the bottom is still in the class, and whoever's not with me is out of the class. So keep up. And so there was like 12 of us there, and my cousin and I look at each other like, sweet, it's on. And there's this supreme confidence, like this guy's not getting away from me.
Right.
And then he took us down this mountain, all fresh powder through trees, off of drops, and it was just insane. And I was just feeling that.
Yeah,
and my cousin was with me, and the whole time it's like you're just in this zone, going down the hill. Anyway, we got to the bottom, and it was just my cousin, myself, and one other guy, 3 out of 12 that made it down to the bottom. And then we spent the rest of the semester like boarding with this guy who was just an absolute beast. And it was so fun because there was nobody in the class that couldn't like do some pretty killer stuff. But you get into a zone like that, everything's on the line, right? Like, and I think you have to have a certain element of risk. The guys were falling down left and right. Once you fall in like 6 feet of powder, you're done.
You're not catching up.
Yeah. And, so it was just those kind of moments, though, where, and I still remember this, we did lots of runs after that, but nothing was on the line like that. Like I wanted in that class, and I didn't want my cousin to beat me to the bottom, and and me not. It's like so. But I think it takes a certain base level of skill, and then it takes us a certain amount of risk.
Yeah,
and I feel like in hunting, that base level of skill doesn't have to be that advanced to try to sneak up on an animal because it's built into your DNA. Yeah, it's what it means to be human.
You've got that base level of skill.
So it doesn't
even if you don't know it.
Yeah,
you've got it.
And so it doesn't take much to get it. The base, and then the risk is like it's life and death here. Yeah. So there's it doesn't matter. you're killing something. Mm-hmm. And I think that just puts it into this other.
That's not a small thing.
Level of.
Yeah, it's not a small thing, right?
Of intensity.
Yeah,
you combine the two. But I would say, flow state while hunting is almost, it's an interesting viewpoint. I hadn't really thought of it like that.
Yeah, no, it's a, I sometimes wonder, sorry, last point.
Yeah.
I sometimes wonder if that's, like when I ask you, why do I hunt, or why do you hunt, excuse me, I sometimes wonder if that's why I hunt, right? Is to access that, right? And Iris, because I had moments in New Zealand, when I bow hunted tar in New Zealand a couple of years ago.
I saw your film.
Yeah. Where I was absolutely in flow state and I didn't put an animal down, right? Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of risk, personal, like just in terms of the terrain we were in. If or when I loosed the arrow, it was to kill, right?
Well, I heard Ranella talk about this, and I thought it was a very honest commentary on hunting when he said something to the effect of, "There's like, I'm going to mess this whole thing up," but he was like, I hunt because it's fun, and I hunt for the food and the sustenance, and I hunt for, I remember, the conservation, something to that effect. And he's like, and if you pull any of those pillars out, I may or may not hunt. Mm-hmm. If you take the fun out of it, and it's not like there's no flow state, there's no moment like that. If it's just for food and not the fun, I don't know. Why not buy it at the store?
But this is my issue, without whatever ticking off a whole bunch of people, although I probably will. It's my issue with the I'm a meat hunter thing, right? Is that's doing a disservice to what it's about, right? I really do believe it. And like you said, like why not just go buy it at the store? Of course it's healthier.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, I mean, we could talk for hours just about that, right? But I feel like coming back to this idea of, the image or how we represent what we stand for is like, I more than understand and agree with the fact that food part of it is a really important strategic move, right?
Absolutely.
We have to do that to put it into an approachable, sort of
palatable,
I guess maybe pun intended.
Yeah.
Package frame for people, right? But we're lying to ourselves if we sit here and say it's about the food only, right?
Which, that's where I think there's a whole frontier of work that can be accomplished.
Absolutely.
There. Because, and there are those that are trying to do that, because statistically, and I think Shane mentioned this on the show I did, or I've heard him talk about this, that making connection between hunting and the food on your plate is powerful.
Absolutely is. Yeah.
It's probably one of the most compelling parts of what we do. And the one thing that makes what we do maintain relevancy in today's world. So I think it's really important that food is emphasized. But I agree that over the last few years, it seems like that became the main focus and nothing else.
Right.
And in certain circles.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah.
And that there's so much more to it that needs to be brought forward and celebrated and talked about. And I think it's happening. I think it's happening all the time. But I absolutely believe that when someone sees me cooking meat on a Traeger grill and I share it to social media, and I'm making some other food, and I'm putting this whole thing together, and this is an elk I shot, and here's the picture of the elk, and here it is on my plate, that is powerful.
Absolutely.
That is powerful.
Yeah.
But also being able to put like a film together that shows the struggle and the hours practice shooting a bow and being able to shoot under pressure and things like that. Those are things too that I think, when shared, are powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an area that we, I don't know if I can say need, but I think it should be putting more and more emphasis on, right? Because that struggle, that's why a lot of people do a lot of the things they do that aren't hunting.
Yeah.
CrossFit or trail running or playing basketball,
mountain climbing, rock climbing,
skiing, snowboarding, all that sort of stuff, right? And but like the food side of it, but show it to them in a way that they lets them make that connection, right?
So when we were talking yesterday, we were talking about
here it comes
the the way that hunting is. There's hunting TV shows, right? Yep. And then there's the Donnie Vincent film, right?
Yep.
Or Rock House Motion or something like that.
Yep.
Okay. And by hunting TV show, I mean, it's kind of a kill it and grill it, 5 kill shots in 25 minutes, kind of thing where, and it's, typical.
Certain shows. I mean, there are obviously.
And, but there's that cliche
that
show.
Formula.
Right?
Yeah.
That formula. Yeah. And, which we all know has done a disservice to what we do, has hurt the image of hunting across the nation, right? People don't like it. They don't relate to it. It doesn't resonate with them. It seems callous. It seems shallow. The motives behind it, whether they truly are shallow or whether they're just poorly portrayed. Either way, it's the net result is the same. People despise hunting and hunters. So,
can I add something into that?
Sure.
I read an article in Outdoor Life recently talking about sort of hunting TV, and it was centered around Shockey and sort of his role and his level of influence in the industry over the past number of years, I guess a couple of decades. And there's a really interesting point in there that one of the guys from, I can't remember which network it was, but one of the outdoor focus networks said that a very large proportion of the audience is non-hunting, that would tune into these shows. And they maybe don't watch a whole show, but it's on, whatever, direct TV or something like that. They're flipping through like, oh, what's Big Man about? Right? And then poof, they get that, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? I mean, I'm picking the one that comes top of mind, but I don't think we in the hunting community have realized just how much we are being scrutinized. Like that, maybe that sounds like a stupid statement because obviously we are, but for how long that we've been being watched, right? And I don't mean on a negative level, just people just stumble upon our stuff, right? Whether it's on social media or TV. And I don't think we acknowledge or recognize that as early as we should have, right? We continue to, as Shane says, right? If you speak, well, I'm going to butcher the quote of his, but it's, speak only to yourself for too long and you'll be the only ones left listening, right? And I think that's it's not where we're at. I think things are changing, as you said. I completely agree with that. But there's still a lot of stuff that is very inwardly focused.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have, if you wanted to get a hunting article, you bought a hunting magazine. There was a barrier. Yeah. If you wanted to see the TV show, you kind of had to buy this show, put it in your cable package or whatever. Or before that even, pretty much it's always been the cable formula.
Yeah.
And so, and then you had to seek it out, go turn the channel and find it and stuff. And now it's just not the world we live in.
No.
It's on Instagram. You can scroll through and I see posts about, unicorns that I don't want to see that come across my feed because they do. And so it's the same for a non-hunter.
Yeah.
They see hunting posts because it's out there and it's public and it comes across their thing. And no longer are we speaking in an echo chamber anymore to just our own people who relate to us and understand us. We're now subjecting people around the world to, 5 kill shots in 5 seconds. And they're just like, what is this?
Well, we're playing in a stadium and acting like we're still in the locker room.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
so with that said, there's this, we got to talking last night and you asked me a question and it was in regards to sort of the responsibility or where does how does the perception change?
And how do we, like, it is happening, right? You and I know this. We talk to a fair number of people in the business and
rapidly, I think.
And rapidly. But I it's the volume, right? The volume, the volume of the stuff that doesn't necessarily represent us well anymore.
I just came back from ATA show.
Yeah.
And I kind of live in an echo chamber myself because of the type of content I seek out, on social media and through digital platforms that I target. When I turn on hunting TV, which I did in Texas, first time I watched it, I don't know how many years, and I flipped through the channels and I saw what was coming on. I was like, these shows suck.
Yeah.
They don't represent hunting.
Yeah.
They are not doing me a service. And I hate to say that because I bet a lot of those people producing shows love hunting, love animals, and love conservation. They also, I think a lot of them like attention, need to sell, and are out of touch with the rest of the world.
Well, it's it's volume, so number, right, and reach, right. I mean, still TV still has a massive reach, right, and this is kind of the I think to me the crux of the question, right? Like when we talk about responsibility, is it the individual or is it the brand? Right, the brand that's going to invest in an individual or invest in a show or a podcast or a publication to change the rules. Because right now the rules in TV are you get X amount of time, you buy that airtime, and you gotta make money on that or at least break even, right?
Yeah.
And there are shows that definitely break the norm. Like let's be clear on that, right? Yeah. But there's a lot of stuff out there that like you said just doesn't represent us well. And so the question is, does it take, and I think you and I arrived at some version of an agreement last night where, this isn't an either or, but does it take a person, right? One person to decide to do it a different way, spread the message a different way, or the brands to invest in that. And so like, to me, the question is not like, who is it? Cause we can obviously agree that it's both, but who has the bigger responsibility is I think, a really important question.
It's interesting. We talked when you first brought it up yesterday, and I thought about it, and I thought about it last night, and then I thought about it today, and it's like, so when I look at, okay, let's take a company like Sitka, for example. Okay. Now I want to see Sitka drive a certain image of hunting and support those who drive a certain image of hunting that reflects well on hunting. And the non-hunting person sees it and says, I respect what hunters stand for and what they believe in, that they're conservation minded. That's what I want a company to do. And there are companies who absolutely drop the ball on that and don't. They use, a lot of stuff that sells. It's sort of like, if you want to sell supplements, you can put a lot of women up in bikinis, and people will buy it. Or you can approach it from another standpoint, that's not the quick and easy route. Okay, you put a lot of beautiful people in it, and then you give them the product, and you're like, "Hey, now you can look like this if you just buy this." And there's your deal. Unfortunately, hunting suffers from the same thing. It's like you can throw, a show up that has five series show that has 5 giant, you name it, mule deer or elk shot in it, right? And it's mostly a sizzle reel with, epic kill shots. Steam blowing out their nose as they're like shook by the bullet, and they're just like, and then they fall off a cliff, and you're like, you're kind of horrified, but you can't take your eyes off of it, and you watch it, right? Certainly that sells, right? There's not a lot of depth to it, and there's not a lot of work involved. You go out, you film something, you kill it, and they put it on air, right? And I think that there's companies that take that shortcut because they know it works and it sells stuff. Yeah. Just like the trophy photo thing where there's just a million grip and grim photos, and that's what they're mostly what they do. I think a non-hunter sees that and is like, I don't get it. I do not understand why these people do this. But we have, there's a lot of people that just like, those are attracted to a girl in a bikini that's selling a supplement or a bow or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's people who it's the quick and easy way.
Mm-hmm.
And their motives are to make money, not to make a difference.
Yeah. The recent conversation on the podcast, similar sort of topic, I guess it dawned on me.
And don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against women in bikinis. Just fun.
I wasn't receiving it that way, nor do I. But it kind of dawned on me that it's analogous to the knock against Wall Street. And I have no problem with Wall Street or whatever Bay Street in Canada, right? But it's short term, right? It's quarter to quarter, right? Got to make our numbers. 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 And if it doesn't happen, we got to make changes, right? And there isn't that. This is not like this generalized a statement, but there's less of that, long term sort of chessboard type thinking, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, that's this debate, right? Because like I said to you last night, right? So let's say you with Gritty, right? Doing a great job of, talking about how important context is for what we do, right? The complexity of this thing we call hunting, and how important context around hunting is to help others see what we're about, right? You're doing a phenomenal job of that. Yet, and we were talking earlier, how long have we been doing these things full time versus part time, right? There's a point where, as a person, you've got, family to think of. You've got your own personal health and stress levels. If you're doing 2 gigs, because you got the side hustle, trying to do right by hunting, right? You can only do that for so long, right? Before you need somebody, either a brand or a benefactor, right, to help you make that next step, right, or make that leap, right? And that to me is this really, really interesting part of this conversation, because of course you need individuals to, kind of stand up on the soapbox and say, like, hey guys, like we and gals, we need to at least put some alternate stuff out there. Certain things maybe do need to be replaced, right? Or at least downplayed in what we do. So you obviously need the individuals, but you also need some form of, as maybe crass as it is to say, financial backing to keep that going, right? And that's where I think our industry is in a really interesting point, because there's a lot of companies that are taking that shorter term,
it works
approach. It works. Right?
It
works to make money if that's the only thing that matters.
It makes money in the echo chamber.
In the echo chamber, yeah.
And as long as but it comes at a cost, in long-term cost. But some of these companies won't be around in 10 years, or 15 years, or 30 years, because hunting may not be around. So there's but for me, so Adam, let me ask you, what makes you want to produce the content that you produce?
That's a great question. So the best way I can answer that is, when the whole idea of, the Journal of Mountain Hunting kind of came about, it was, by and large, because I and the guys that were involved with me back then that, one's not involved at all, the other one's, barely now. But let's call us the co-founders. We just couldn't get the stuff we wanted to get, right? Like content-wise, right? And there was a lot of stuff. There's obviously no shortage of content out there. Either it wasn't very useful, right? It's kind of, I've seen one, I've seen them all.
Okay.
Right? Yes. Article, right? So that there'd be some useful stuff, right, from whatever publication or website or forum. But then that would just get regurgitated and slightly reformatted across the board, right?
Yeah. 7 ways to kill a buck during the rut.
Right.
Which pitch points do you want?
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. So there's either a lot of that stuff or material that I did not feel represented me and who I was as a hunter.
In what way?
Well, I mean, if we talk about the TV show thing, right? Like the $20 in 20 minutes type.
What were they missing that you wanted in there?
A depth of, I was going to say explanation. That's not the right way to put it. An exploration of the full experience, right? That context, right? You always talk about context, right? Like that context.
More context, not just a kill shot.
Not just a kill shot, yeah. And a commentary, be that audio, video, written, around all the stuff that goes into this, right? Like, it's a fraction of a second when that arrow is loose or that bullet is sent, right? And there are hundreds upon hundreds of hours that go into that second or that fraction of a second, right? And I don't feel like that, that bottom of the iceberg, right, was really being explored.
So would you say that your values around life and around hunting were not being met by much of the content that was out there?
Yeah, that's a pretty fair, far more succinct and better way to put it.
Okay, so
which is not my forte. So thank you, Brian.
Well, you helped me get there. So at that point, then, when you explored this and you started doing it and you started putting the Journal of Mountain Hunting together.
Yep.
Would a company would you have changed your content if a company came along and was like, "Hey, Adam, if you do this, like 3 more kill shots in this right here, and you take out the part about the meat"?
No, the answer is no.
So if they came to you and tried to buy you to go down the cheap and quick route for selling product, you'd say no.
No. Every company we ever spoke with or have spoken with, one of the first things that I say is we are content first.
So basically,
and editorially, this is who we are. Take it or leave it.
So you wouldn't exchange the values that you hold or sacrifice those in any way or lessen those for
money. For financial gain, yeah.
Okay. So to me,
now hold on, Brian. So because I'm not walking back here. I just want to make sure. So I stand by what I said 100%.
Yes.
To this day.
Yeah.
That's easy to say 3.5 years in with the brand.
Yeah, but you did it.
Sure. But I wouldn't. It would have stayed alive in some form. Mm-hmm. But if it weren't for the support of companies, you and I wouldn't be sitting here today.
I agree with that. So what I'm getting at,
we wouldn't. Or I wouldn't. Excuse me. Be doing this full time.
I wouldn't say that holding to your values and getting financial support are mutually exclusive.
Sure. No, of course not.
You can
of course not,
marry those up.
Absolutely.
It's sometimes, though, not as readily and quickly and easily achieved as what I would deem the shortcut.
Yeah.
And what you might call the sellout or just the
right.
I don't like that, but what I'm getting at is, as an individual, you developed a core set of values that you stand by and live by. And it doesn't matter about the money or who comes along. You at an individual level would do what you do.
Well, and so yes, you're right.
Because
absolutely.
Because I feel like because we talked about this briefly, that it's shared. Mm-hmm. The responsibility for doing good, in both hunting and I think in life. For me, I firmly am attached to the idea that rests on the individual. Mm-hmm. Like each individual person bears that responsibility. Mm-hmm. At the corporate level, I tend to be cynical. And I look at the world in a capitalistic way. Mm-hmm. And I think the market dictates what businesses do often.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's why I would say we're in the position we're in to a large extent, is that the businesses fed the appetite of the people. Mm-hmm. And in our echo chamber, hunters said, by virtue of their actions and what they chose to watch and buy, that they liked 20 kill shots in 20 minutes, that they liked, no context, or at least they were okay. They like lots and lots of inches and giant trophy animals. So because the market said that's what we want, that's what a lot of the community did for some reason or lost their way. Businesses gave it to them. To me, if you want to change the way corporations respond, the way companies do their business, that comes at changing the hearts and minds of the individuals. So when individuals start to change, when they are like, I want something that's much deeper than this, and this does not resonate with me, and I will not watch it. I won't buy this. I don't agree with this. Then companies go, oh, wait, okay, things are not the same. This isn't working.
Yep.
We need to change our product because the masses don't agree with it. So I tend to think, I love capitalism. I love the free markets. I like to see, people by virtue of their purchasing and in communicating back to the corporations that they influence corporations. That said, I'm thinking about it, and I also firmly believe that in extreme ownership at an individual level. So it's my responsibility to own my life, who I am, how much money I make, how much money I don't make, where I spend my time, who I spend it with. It's all me. And no one's to blame at the end of the day except me. And it's not equal opportunity it's not equal outcome, equality of outcome. I have an opportunity like everybody else. There are people far more skilled than me, far more gifted in business, far more gifted in speaking and so forth. I can't compete with that, but I'm better at certain things than other people. We're not all the same.
Yeah.
But I think that owning it and then working within my abilities and achieving what I can with what I've been given and giving back, it's all part of what makes the individual. But then I was thinking about corporations and how much influence they have, how much money, how much power, and I feel like corporations are like an individual.
Of course they are, yeah.
In a way.
Well, legally speaking, they are treated exactly as such, right?
And so they're an individual made up of a whole bunch of
other
individuals.
Yeah.
And that tone at the top within that company, again, maybe resonating, maybe originating from the main set of board of directors or whatever they are. If their value system is like your value system, and it's, hey, these are what matter to me in life, and money is way down the list, then they're not going to sacrifice those values for dollars, and they're going to stick to that. So who bears the greater responsibility? Corporations and the type of content they support and type of content that they perpetuate, or the individuals? I kind of feel like they're the same after thinking about it.
Interesting point. Yeah. Well, and there's no doubt that, and as you were walking through some of that, I was like, yeah, I think I know where you're going with this. Individuals, because at the end of the day, there is a, to use the great G-Dub's term, there is a final decider, right?
Yeah.
In every company at some point, right? Which is an individual. So I think it's an interesting question because hopefully people will think about their actions and that sort of stuff and how they represent hunting on an individual level. But I guess the part of it that I'm not saying I'm not convinced with it being one and the same, because I think I would mostly agree with that. But the part of it that I find really interesting and I guess challenging for both the individual and the corporation is, when I ask about like responsibility, right? Like who bears the greater responsibility is, there's a lot at stake for both parties, right? The corporation's got a budget, it's got business objectives and goals to meet. The individual is putting themselves out there, so there's a personal level of risk. Maybe they're investing in this,
whatever they're doing,
right? But as you and I know, it's not a small thing to invest a lot of time and energy and passion into something. And there's a cost to that. But a lot of that's intangible. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of that's intangible. So for you and I to start a platform or a publication or whatever, or anybody, and to invest that time, and nowadays what is a pretty low amount of money into getting something at least initiated, isn't that risky, right? But for a corporation, a big company, to bet a certain proportion of their budget on something that doesn't necessarily, that isn't purely numbers based, that isn't purely audience based, right? I think is a tougher. I do think it's a tougher position to be in, right? Because I think I said this, and I know I said this on a recent podcast, is if you look through our Instagram feed in the last little while, we had some people do some like feed takeovers and do a great job. But time and time again, most liked post is either a grip and grin or a dead animal, right? And so I see that, and the business person inside me goes, we need more of those, right?
Right. That's what the metrics say.
That's what the metrics say, right? Because we're supposed to think about and look at the metrics and pitch the metrics and sell the metrics, right? You and I talk to Sitka or we talk to whoever, right? At some point, we're talking metrics, right?
Yep.
But, the founder of, my little platform says, hell no, because I'm not chasing metrics. And I refuse to in certain ways. Like we gotta be in the metrics game.
Yeah,
we gotta have certain numbers to even be in a conversation.
Right.
But the point of this is, I remember hearing a story about Steve Jobs. Is something where like people didn't know they wanted the iPod.
Yeah, people don't know what they want until you tell them.
Exactly, right? And so, for
I that's what I do when I record a podcast. I'm like, people don't know they want this, but they do. And that's what I tell myself.
Yeah, it's every single episode I've ever done. No, but point being, like, for us as individuals, right, to make that investment, to take a risk, right, to take a risk and put ourselves out there, put a different message out there, image, whatever, isn't that costly, right? It's just not, right? It's time, a bit of energy, maybe a small amount of dollars and cents, right?
Okay, right.
Right. But say a brand like Sitka or Yeti or whoever, right? To say, we've got, board of directors. There's a whole hierarchy of people, right?
Right.
Involved.
Right.
And they have this budget. And they have other people helping them with that budget.
It's marketing.
It's marketing. That's the machine, right? That's the machine. And you're right. There has to be an individual in there that says, maybe these metrics don't make sense, or maybe this is unproven, but we're going to invest in it, right? But that individual doesn't have the opportunity to do that without the corporation or the brand.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
And I'm sorry, and I don't want that to come across as like a rebuttal. It's not meant to be. It's
No.
just, I do think we're in this weird where everyone's kind of looking around the room going, well, who's going to put their hand up, right? And there's obviously hands being put up, right?
Right.
But I think, like, at some point, a stand has to be taken that will require the level of investment that, the solopreneur just can't do without the support from, the corporation, the brand.
Well, I think that when you look at where money is being spent now with a lot of companies, you have, it's almost like there's like two completely opposite visions.
Absolutely.
And I can understand why. Like you just said, a guy, a company makes a post and it's a kill shot and it gets 1 million views, and someone else puts a post up, with a father-son hunt about, his son's first spike buck.
Yeah.
1,000 views.
Right.
Let's say 5,000 views or something. It's really hard as a company to then walk away from the kill shot.
The million.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, There's now that's an extreme example.
Yeah.
My friend Ryan Lampers with Hunt Harvest Health.
Yeah.
It's funny. They posted a post last week of Ryan shooting his mule deer.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
It's over 100,000 views in a short time.
Wow.
And they're like, man, we can't get 2,000 views on some posts that are much more meaningful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So one might look at that and go, man, I need more of this.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think's really at play there, though? Like, do you think what do you think those 100,000 views represent?
Well, this is the whole, supposed engagement discussion, right? Like what, vanity metrics and superficial views, like what, likes and follows, right? Like what did those actually,
what do they mean?
What do they mean? And look, like I don't want to sound like I'm, slagging the marketing world or industry, but like, I don't think anybody knows at the end of the day, right? Like I think we're all kind of chasing the tail, right? The rules keep changing, right?
But I should ask, what do you think it means? What does Adam Janke think? What do those metrics say to you when you see 100,000 people watch a kill shot, and you see 3,000 or 4,000 people watch a clip about
father-son spike buck type of deal?
Yeah. So what does the 100,000 say to you? And I mean, is it what it looks at like on the surface?
I don't think it is what it looks like on the surface. In that, I think there's a lot more depth to that superficial outcome, if you know what I mean. So 100,000 views, people watching it, we could say it's like, well, people just don't have the time to really engage with. They want the quick hit, right? Oh, cool, yeah, okay, next one, right?
Right.
So we could say that, right? We could say people like to see stuff killed, maybe, right?
Yeah.
But what that 100,000 views, I think, says to me is, we need. To me, the answer is another question, right? Is we need to figure out why that's happening and why these people are responding in that way to something that, could be portrayed negatively or could be, perceived negatively, right? And maybe half of those 100,000 are people, sharing with a friend, like, look at this a-hole doing this, right?
What type of connection do you think that content makes with the people who view it? What value did it transfer to the person who watched it?
I'm not stumbling and bumbling. I'm trying to make sure this comes out right. My assumption would be that the bulk of those views were basically a quick endorphin hit, right? The addiction of the platform, which is, proven, right?
Yeah. Dude, we're on the same page. So if that's true, what do you think is does the person feel, I mean, obviously they don't, but the question is like, do they feel enriched when they walk away?
I would assume probably not, right? I mean, look, I saw that. I enjoyed it. I was fascinated by it. I like what Ryan does. I like what he's about.
And I'm not picking on Ryan's one.
No, yeah, of course. Yeah, I don't think, at least, sorry, I didn't take it that you were, and I hope the people listening don't think that, but, look, it was a cool clip, right? Like, I'm a hunter, and seeing a mule deer, come in that close after the shot, like that was kind of weird and cool, and I don't see open country like that very often, right? So I was fascinated by the clip on numerous levels, right? But until you brought it up, I hadn't thought about it again.
That's what I'm getting at.
Right.
The only reason I thought about it is because of the text beneath it and the story about that experience. And so, I've done this before where I have a message I want out there. I want people to see it. I want to tell people about my thoughts on conservation, on predator management, on wolves, right? I know that if I post a picture of a wolf in my backpack, people are going to stop.
Yes.
And go, wait. Or with a wolf with a bow and arrow. And they're going to stop and they're going to go, whoa.
Yeah.
It's a grip and grin photo.
Yeah.
But then it's like, there's tens of thousands of people who stop what they're doing and actually read that content. And then there's hundreds or thousands of people who leave comments on that engage. Yeah. And it gets pretty heated.
Yeah.
But it makes people stop and think. So I think some of that endorphin, eye candy kind of stuff can be used in a way to get attention.
Yeah.
But if you don't leave something of greater value with it, then I think it's shallow.
Yeah.
That transfer of value to the individual is so pathetic and so weak and so useless that those numbers don't really mean anything.
Yeah.
And if you have a platform where that's what you give all the time, there's no real connection.
Yeah.
The people consuming that content are not coming back to that source for information, knowledge, for out of respect.
Yeah.
They're doing it for a cheap hit.
Yeah. What's interesting about what you just said there is I'm bad for thinking black and white more often than I should, right? It's this or that, right? And what you just described really is I guess the strategic or concerted use of, let's say, some of the stuff that you and I at least would probably agree that we want to see play a smaller role in our imagery, right? And I mean that like both literally and figuratively.
Right.
But to get the message across that we want, right? When you talk about like a wolf in a bow or a wolf in a pack or a mountain lion, something like that, right? It's going to stop somebody on their scroll, right? Both inside and outside our community. And the message we put along with that is our opportunity, right?
I truly believe that.
No, it's a huge point, and it's not one that, I was thinking about when I asked you that question yesterday, right? Of, where does responsibility lie? And then you look at, all the things that come beneath that, i.e., what's the image? What's the message? What's the TV show? Like all that sort of stuff, right? I sometimes I worry that when we have this sort of a conversation, it's received as saying like the old way is bad. And sorry, go ahead.
I think if I was my dad's age, or my uncle Kevin, who owns High Point Outfitters in Arizona and has been hunting since the 70s as a kid, and he passionate hunter. Period. One of the people most dedicated to hunting that I've ever met.
Yeah.
But I mean, he has come from that culture.
Yeah.
That's the world they grew up in. I think I would have been right there along with him in the echo chamber, just like everybody else. Things have been brought to my awareness that I didn't realize before, and so I'm not judging. I'm trying not to look at, to say that, those are bad people in any way.
Right.
What I'm saying is, our message needs to change, because it's deeper than what we've been showing.
Yeah.
And not to say there are people out there who are focused on the almighty dollar, and that's their main thing, or their egos. And so they're not going to change. No. They're going to keep doing things that they think that gives them the feedback they want.
Yeah.
And that's why I say changing the heart of the individuals. After a while, those people, that listen to or provide feedback to that individual that, let's say, is all about ego and himself and all about all the animals dying on camera, pretty soon he won't get the feedback that he's been getting.
Yeah.
Because people go, I'm not behind this, because their hearts are changed.
Yeah.
And that's where I like to focus on the individual more than the corporation, and kind of let the corporation follow. And, you know, I probably wouldn't have said that, but after having some conversations with Shane Mahoney, and this was, you know, I think these ideas started to change. Honestly, I started to think a lot more deeply about all of this when I first came across Rivers Divide and the earliest episodes of Meat Eater TV, and I started to go, wow, this is me. This is what I feel, but this is not what's out there. There's not a lot of it. And so my ideas started to change. But when I heard Shane Mahoney talk about Theodore Roosevelt, and he was saying, you know, hey, he didn't go to the courtrooms and battle for hunting. He didn't go, you know, into these places, and create, like the Sheep Foundation and so forth. Right. And then a fight behind closed doors. He actually made the appeal to the masses to care about animals, and that it meant, you know, to be American meant to value our wildlife and our wild places. That you can't really call yourself an American if you don't hold treasure those things. And it became to be a patriot, you had to also care about wildlife, and so much different than the commoditization of wildlife in, let's say, Europe. You know, especially certain areas, public lands. You know, these things that he promoted, he promoted through communicating that idea to individuals that aren't in a courtroom. But nonetheless, to me, he did it the right way, because those are the people that drive everything else. You know, it doesn't matter what Sitka does, or you or I or somebody else. Well, if 80% of the public loves hunting and believes in conservation, I mean, we're set, right?
Yeah.
And even if Sitka went down some other road, or another company went down some road that was super negative and super bad and super, you know, it doesn't change. They would have a hard time influencing the world, because individuals have their hearts sorted out.
Yeah, and so I guess what I think on that is,
not that they don't have power or influence.
No.
I just don't think it's as grand as we often think it is.
Yeah, you know, and maybe I'm just too much of a cynic when it comes to social media, because, you know, I'm starting to get enough gray hairs to...
Dude, I'm all gray.
To be one of those dudes, right? But I agree. Your example about TR, I think, is really good, but I also think it's what worked at that time, right? And I see the statistics and anecdotally see the behaviors, right? And fall into some of those behaviors myself sometimes. I almost walked into a friggin' wall in one of the hotels here because my head was buried in my phone.
Yeah.
Right? And if you look at, say, what happened with the recent election for you guys, right? And that's not me saying positive or negative or any sort of opinion on that, but the tactics that were in part used to achieve that end result, you know, social media was acknowledged as one of the primary vehicles for achieving that, right?
Right.
And so my concern, given the current landscape, is that these platforms have become so powerful that that's how a lot of people, you know, receive their information, right? Be it Twitter or Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah.
And I've had these conversations with people on the marketing side of things that say, like, look, you know, if you guys want to get more likes and follows, you got to be posting this many times per day or this per week or whatever, right? And then, you know, we have another conversation and say, like, yeah, shoot, you know, well, you know what, that brand and that brand, they went to like 3 times a day, every single day. So if you want to get seen, you got to be there with them, right? And so, like, I worry that, and you know what, maybe you're right. Maybe it is that the individual has to make the decision to not,
because
use those platforms, but just let me finish that point.
Okay.
The current habits for receiving information are not what they were when, TR went around the country and,
I
stood up
agree.
on a soapbox and has that
I think
famous
they're
picture.
way better now.
Well, they're more,
So
it's more democratized.
Let me ask you, so there are no gatekeepers anymore.
No.
So given, not none, but I mean, there's very few barriers to entry if you want to start a podcast.
Absolutely.
If you want to start the Journal of Mountain Hunting, if you want to build a broadhead, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
The barriers to entry are not like they used to be.
Yeah.
There's no one standing at the network TV, standing there blocking you because they may not like your show or don't think it has a future. Mm-hmm. My question, like, when you look at social media and your consumption habits, what are you consuming? Are you going to like Leopold, or I'm not sure who you're really involved with and working with, but I mean, because I look at the presence, social media presence of, let's say, Leopold or let's say Hoyt. And it's not greatly surpassing the social influence of a lot of individuals.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it used to be different, though, where a lot of these companies had the money to play in certain spaces, and so they dictated a lot of the content and what was out there. But now, somebody who's never done anything, who just likes to post insightful or entertaining content, builds a huge sphere of influence, which then dictates a lot of, like, it influences.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what
it hurts minds. Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, I like it. I like it that there's so many different that anybody can do it, and that as they do it, I would like to see over time. It's sort of like, I'm a big proponent of the free speech, right?
Sure.
You get feedback in a really open market by being able to say exactly what you want to say. Mm-hmm. Society at large has a way of, sort of sorting itself out.
Yep.
And so there's a lot to be said, I think, for the way things are shared now, and that I think individual to individual, there's a positive influence taking place that wouldn't be there without social media.
Yeah.
And I think that someone like myself or you have have an ability to make a tremendous impact in the way people feel about conservation or feel about hunting by the messages that we provide, right? Where I wouldn't have that voice in years past.
Yeah. Yeah. And I completely agree with that. And I between the online magazine and the podcast, I milk that system for everything.
People are responding.
No, sure. But my point is, like, I made really good use of, those platforms or these opportunities that have been opened up to us. Right.
Well,
but I'm all in favor of that, right? Of the obvious and significant reduction in the role of a gatekeeper, that, somebody deciding what gets published or doesn't get published or whatever. I fear for I don't know how to put it, but let's say consumption habits, or the habits that are that come with that, right? So, the average attention span is 8 seconds, right? Those sort of things, right? The things where, there's more volume, no question there's more volume, and there's more doors open, right? But, and there's lots of opportunity to have a positive influence, without a doubt. But there are, not issues, but there are some negative components to those benefits. Yeah. Right? There's a positive and a negative to it that, I think we need to be mindful of, I guess is what I'm saying. And like a company or a brand, it's kind of like they can use it for good, they can use it for bad, right?
Yeah, I think I think I agree with you. I think that when I always go back to value.
Yeah.
Like a transfer of value.
Yeah.
And human beings are human beings. And so we're a pile of genetic and hormonal like issues and
we're a mess.
We're hungry,
Yeah.
we're horny,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
we're all of these things, right? And then we're also composed of this philosophical component of consciousness and morality, and we have a sense of right and wrong, right? And so, to me, when you transfer value, often you can transfer value in the sense of, in a shallow way, where you're appealing to the hormones and the endorphins or
Exactly.
whatever, the excitement, and you're providing shallow, empty value.
And so you're articulating far better than I did what I see as being what I if you ask me, Adam, do you think it's more positive or negative, sort of the state of social media right now? I would say it's at best even, and I might even lean towards negative because of exactly what you just said.
And I do think that boils down to individuals, both in their consumption, but also in what they produce. When I look at value, I think to myself, I don't want to provide shallow, empty value that just makes someone appeals to their hormones or their human nature, right? I really want to appeal to something deeper.
Yep.
And so I want them to walk away from, be it a film, a photo, or a post. Don't get me wrong, I love to make people laugh. I mean, half of our gritty tech tips are centered around just making fun of archery or just life. But at the same time, and I think that's valuable. I think people walk away from that feeling better about
absolutely,
especially if it's positive. But I feel like it's important for me, even though I might get 300,000 people look at a gritty tech tip on how to get faster hands so you shoot your bow better or something, right? And then I'll get 10,000 views on a post about conservation.
Right.
But I feel like those 10,000 views through the conservation piece, I traded value to the people who consume that in a way that's meaningful on a much deeper level. And so that connection with those 10,000 people is much more valuable and important than the connection I made just by making some people laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though I reached far more people, like you said, they laughed and they moved on.
Yeah.
They're done.
Yeah.
Or even worse, if I appeal to some carnal, pointless urge, even there's really no connection made, really. And so I feel like I have a responsibility to transfer true value. So I don't really look at when I'm posting anything to social media. I don't follow the people who follow Gertie Bowman. Probably there's no, sometimes I'm very active on my Instagram stories. Sometimes I'm very active making posts because I have things I want to say. And then I'll go days and days without a single post. And then I'll be active again. And it's because I don't want to follow some formula for what I do, other than I want to bring value to people.
Right.
So if I'm not producing something of value, I'm not just posting to get my 3 posts and meet the mark.
Right.
And maybe that's hurting the brand, or maybe it's hurting potential growth, but I don't think it does. I think there's a lot of noise out there.
Yep.
And a lot of just useless stuff. And so if you really try to produce something that's meaningful and adds value, everything else falls into place. And I would like to see companies do that. And rather than focus on dollars, like you said, quarter to quarter or short term, rather than focus on views, likes, stats, it's focusing on giving value. And I think again, things fall into place that way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and I think a big part of this, and we'll have to wrap here.
Yeah,
soon,
we gotta.
Because if one of us wins that sheep hunt, if we're not there, dude, we don't get it. I think final point I would make is maybe one last thing for both of us and people listening to think about is, I've been reading some stuff recently about how the new view of marketing is for a brand or a company to not look at marketing as a cost. I have a metric. I need a return on that investment, right? So I spend X and I want to see a certain conversion number or whatever. We all we talk forever about the metrics that we all got to play around with. And this book is saying you should be looking at marketing as a profit center. Become a brand or a company, but no matter what they are, should be looking at themselves as a media entity first. Whether they make a product, right? Or they actually produce content, right? Mm-hmm. And the example that is used frequently thus far in what I've read is Red Bull. Right?
Okay.
Red Bull makes energy drinks, sure.
Right.
But it's a media brand, right? And they make magazines, print magazines, 3 or 4 different print magazines. Mm-hmm. They have music licensing. They have video licensing. They built an audience, and can sell almost anything to that audience, right? And so I think the interesting side of this is when you say we say we like to see a company sort of invest in values, right, or giving back. Mm-hmm. Look, at the end of the day, a company's there for one reason, right? It can't give back if it doesn't have money to give back, right? It's got to.
I wouldn't say they're there for one reason. But I would say that they have to make money, or they cannot. Yeah.
There's
perpetuate
a fundamental need to to achieve more than making money, right? Mm-hmm. Which is making money. It's the fundamental need. And so when we say that sort of thing, I think but you hear people like Gary Vaynerchuk say this all the time, right? You are a media entity, right? As a person, right?
You're a brand.
You're a brand, right? And brands are brands, but they're sort of on the renting side of things in terms of their media approach, like renting space, right? Renting airtime, renting a print ad, renting a TV ad, whatever, as opposed to being like producers of the media, right? And there's Sick Insight blog would be a good example, right? They a lot of brands produce content, right? But are they producing that content with that goal of motive and trading value, right? Like providing value, as opposed to saying, okay, we like those metrics, like those metrics, we like that message that resonates with our values, so let's give that person or that other company or that publication or whatever money, as opposed to like our message matters, right? And how we achieve that through all these other channels that are out there, we'll figure that out, right?
Yeah, when I heard Donnie, I was like, I would like hunters and, those that are trying to communicate why we do what we do. I would really appreciate it if they targeted the non-hunter rather than the hunter, or if they're producing something that they targeted the non-hunter with that content, with them in mind. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting because then Donnie, I told you earlier, he kind of took it that one step further and was like, yeah, that's not necessarily the best motive either. I mean, it almost misses the point. Again, you're just kind of creating stuff. Maybe it loses some genuine nature about it. Mm-hmm. When you go to, I'm not explaining this very well, but when he said, actually hunt for the right reasons. Yeah. Do that first. Yeah. Yeah. Like live for the right reasons, do conservation for the right reasons, and then that content will just come out more natural.
Exactly. Yep.
And I think when you dig deep into motives for why you do what you do, you think you've got there, and you're like, well, no, there's actually deeper and deeper and deeper. And if you can get to the purest of those motives, as you go back, it's great to make content that that the non-hunter understands and resonates with them. But it's even better if you yourself are hunting for the purest of reasons.
Right. No, I agree. And it's, I think we're at a transition point, on the individual and the company level, on the social and technological level, right?
Yeah.
We've all been, all these platforms that are so important, all these mediums like podcasting that are so important now. A lot of us jumped in and just like, shoot, we're going to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Or at least try to. And I think, there's an element of, like anything that's, there's an experiment. We don't know what we don't know, right? And you get into it and we start to see how people consume and what they consume and what, it used to be page views mattered. Now nobody cares about page views, really. It's engagement, and who knows what the next iteration of this will be, right?
Right.
Facebook goes and changes their algorithm, right? So now a company has to go, crap, we thought we figured out Facebook. Now we've got to, change everything yet again, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, a past guest on our show said, we're ready for the next chapter, right? And I think to me, I think that's maybe and happily want to give you a chance to say a parting shot or thought, but like, I think that's what we need to be focused on. What is the next chapter, right? So we've got all these tools, we've got all these thoughts, we've got the old ways, the new ways, and the unknown ways of where we're going to take this thing. There's threats, there's opportunities. And how do we, on the individual and on the business level, or brand or company or corporation level, set the new standard, right?
Yeah. I think to wrap it up, my thoughts, I said it earlier, I really do have a lot of belief in the individual, both to be absolutely horrible and to be absolutely incredible.
Yep.
And remarkable. And I think it starts with each of us. I listened to Jocko talk. I think I might have mentioned this before, but, it was someone he had interviewed, and they said, we often look at others and say, well, if they would just change and that person would just change, and if Adam would just figure things out, then things would be better. And really our focus should a lot of our focus should be on making ourselves better. Like, man, I'm an a-hole sometimes, or I really didn't treat this person the way I should have. And I really wasn't as compassionate. I really didn't, focus on you and becoming a better version of you, like in any way that you can. And when you do that, I think the world changes rather than trying to focus on changing other people to be like how you want them to be.
Right.
And I look at that with like the anti-hunter movement, that those that are extreme on that end of the spectrum, they're not looking at making themselves better. They're looking at making other people live the way they think they should live. Yep. It's all outward focused. And I think when you start messing with that game, you're lost. So my appeal to people listening is to make yourself a better person. Work on that individual. Take extreme ownership for your life and who you are and what you stand for. I liked what you said earlier about how doesn't matter if someone came to you. And I knew that before I even asked it. That you're not going to change your message or what you believe in for money. It never was going to happen. That those companies could take a walk.
Maybe for a big enough check.
We can all be bought. But no, I think there's at the end of the day, the more people that have...
we can all be bought. So really sorry to interrupt, Brian. But just think about what we could do with that $1 billion.
But I think that our ability to hold true to what we believe in and what our values are, or like have integrity for what we believe in, will make the difference. And that's really especially true for corporations.
Yeah.
Because they have that pressure to do first quarter, second quarter earnings, so forth. They have that pressure to make the money to stay afloat, to keep going. And too often that drives shallow decisions, and it causes people to compromise their core beliefs and values.
And it comes back to like what you said about that individual within that corporation, right, needs to take, I think, your words to heart about being the best person they can be, right, and channeling that really pursuit through their company, right?
One of the best things I ever did as an individual was get out of debt, stay out of debt, and build up a large savings. That gave me the freedom to do what I wanted to do, to be able to say, I'm not taking these dollars because they would cause me to compromise my values and what I believe in. Some people have family. They live month to month. They have no savings. They're afraid of what would happen if they took a stand or they made a jump, whatever. And then they're done.
Yeah.
So I think more, that's another area where if you've got control of your money, it's a lot easier to hold your ground.
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. So. I've had moments in the business life where that, when you're growing fast, that comes at a cost, right? I mean, there's an element of, whatever debt and investment you got to put into something to get to a certain level, right? And the day I found myself making a decision based on that and not what I stood for, was the day I had to really sit down and think about things, right?
Yeah. And we've all been there.
No, sure. But that's the point. Yeah. That's the point, right? It's like
and there's a spectrum, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess what I'm trying to drive at there is like, when you say the things that you say or anything I've said here, I want it to sound preachy, right? And, finger wagging is, wisdom comes with a lot of scars, right? And I think like when you talk about being good and focusing on you and, getting out of debt, staying out of debt, that sort of stuff, that's based on experience, right? And the pain that came from that and why that was such a formative, process and lesson to go through, right? And I think that's kind of the point here is that we're not saying it's easy, any of this stuff, right?
Feels good.
Yeah, it does. But the process of it can be tough, right? But we got to do it. Right?
Yeah,
we got to do it. So,
well, man, I appreciate.
Let's hope that one of those sheep didn't get pulled for us.
It doesn't start yet, right?
It's at 4:00, man.
Is it?
It's going.
I think
If our phones both started buzzing,
we gotta go.
Yeah, we gotta go.
Despite our ever-changing, ever-indignant world with its growing ignorance of and indifference to the ways of the wild, I remain a predator, pitying those who revel in artificiality and synthetic success while regarding me and my kind as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood. I stalk a real world of dark wood and tall grass stirred by a restless wind blowing across sunlit water and beneath star-strewn sky. And on those occasions when I choose to kill, to claim some small part of nature's bounty for my own, I do so by choice, quickly, with the learned efficiency of a skilled hunter. Further, in my heart and mind, I know the truth and make no apologies for my actions or my place in time. Others around me may opt to eat only plants, nuts, and fruits. Still others may employ faceless strangers to procure their meats, their leather, their feathers, and all those niceties and necessities of life. Such is their right, of course, and I wish them well. All I ask in return is no one begrudge me, and all of us who may answer the primordial stirrings within our hunter souls, my right to do some of these things myself. What you just heard is a quote from M.R. James. We truly live in a world that is largely ignorant and indifferent to the ways of the wild. And although some regard us as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood, we have the opportunity to change the way these people view the hunter and the hunt. We can share our experiences and nature's bounty with those who employ these faceless strangers. And by so doing, we make a difference, not just for ourselves, but for the wild animals in the wild places we care so deeply about. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting and the outdoors. Our wild animals and our wild places depend on it.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.